My sister got $1 million. I got Dad's failed business, an $80,000 debt. She had no idea what Dad really left me. Look, I'm a CPA. Numbers don't lie. People do. That's something I learned the hard way sitting in Mr. Henderson's office on a Tuesday afternoon that felt like it lasted 3 years. The air conditioning was broken. The fake palm tree in the corner looked about as alive as I felt. And my father's lawyer kept clearing his throat like he was trying to cough up the courage to ruin my life. My dad had been gone 2 weeks. Cancer. The fast kind that doesn't give you time to say all the things you should have said years ago. We'd gather for the reading of the will, which sounds formal and dramatic, but really was just me, my sister Chloe, my mom, and Henderson in his depressing office that smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. Henderson adjusted his glasses, started reading. The first part was standard stuff. Personal items. The house went to Mom. Dad's golf clubs to his buddy Frank. His vintage record collection split between me and Chloe, which was actually kind of nice because Dad and I used to bond over old Fleetwood Mac albums when I was a kid. Then Henderson got to the money part. His voice changed, got quieter, more careful. To my daughter Chloe, I leave the entirety of my savings and investment accounts, totaling approximately $1 million. The room went silent except for the hum of the broken AC. I watched Chloe's face. She didn't gasp or act surprised. She just did this tiny thing with her mouth. Not quite a smile, more like satisfaction, like she just checked her bank app and confirmed the deposit she'd been expecting. $1 million. To Chloe, Henderson kept reading, and I already knew what was coming. I'm a numbers guy, remember? I'd done the math in my head. Dad had about $1.2 million in total assets. If Chloe got the million, that left me with, to my son Thomas, I leave 100% ownership of my company, Apex Innovations, LLC. That's it. That was my inheritance. A company. Not just any company. My dad's company. His hobby. His passion project that had been hemorrhaging money since I was in high school. The thing he'd pour hours into every weekend. Talking about patents and innovations and how he was ahead of his time, while Mom rolled her eyes and paid the bills with her teaching salary. Apex Innovations. The business equivalent of a participation trophy. I looked at my mom. She was staring at the carpet, like it had suddenly become the most interesting thing in the world. Wouldn't meet my eyes. I'd seen her do that before. When I was 12 and she forgot to pick me up from soccer practice. When I was 16 and she missed my academic award ceremony because Chloe had a dance recital. When I was 22 and she didn't come to my college graduation because, and I quote, it's just undergrad, honey, not that big a deal. My mom had mastered the art of avoiding accountability by avoiding eye contact. I'm not a dramatic person. I don't yell. I don't make scenes. I'm the guy who does his taxes in January and color codes his file folders. But sitting there in Henderson's office, I felt something crack inside my chest. Not anger. Worse. Disappointment so heavy it felt like swallowing rocks. This wasn't just unfair. It was absurd. Mathematical insanity. Chloe gets liquid assets worth $1 million. Cash. Stocks. Bonds. Things you can actually use. I get a defunct LLC with zero revenue and a P.O. box address. Henderson finished reading. There was some legal jargon about executors and probate timelines. I didn't hear most of it. My brain was too busy running calculations. Try and make the numbers make sense. Try and find some logic in the equation. Then Chloe moved. She reached over and put her hand on mine. Her manicure was perfect. French tips. Probably cost more than my watch. She'd always been like this. Put together. Camera ready. Her whole life was a performance, and she never broke character. Her voice dripped with fake sympathy. Tommy, I'm so sorry, but you're so smart. You'll figure something out with the company. And I just need security, you know? I'm not good with business stuff like you are. She called me Tommy. Nobody calls me Tommy. I'm 40 years old. I'm Tom. Just Tom. But to Chloe, I'd always be Tommy. Little brother Tommy. Nerdy Tommy. Boring Tommy, who did everyone's math homework and never complained. Mom finally looked up from the carpet. Thomas, your father wanted you to have something real. something to build. He always said you were our numbers genius. Don't make this difficult. Don't make this difficult. That phrase, that's the one that really got me. Like I was the problem. Like I was being unreasonable for expecting, I don't know, maybe half? Maybe even a third? Some acknowledgement that I existed. That I'd spent every Sunday for the last 5 years visiting Dad while Chloe was too busy building her Instagram brand to show up. They weren't asking my opinion. They weren't checking if I was okay with this. The decision had already been made. For me, about me, without me. I was 40 years old, and my family was still treating me like I was 10 and had just been given the knockoff action figure instead of the one I actually wanted for Christmas. We filed out of Henderson's office into the parking lot. The Arizona sun hit us like a physical slap. It was October, but it was still 95 degrees because Phoenix doesn't believe in autumn, and that's when the masks came off. Chloe pulled out her phone before we even reached our cars. I watched her open her banking app, watched her check the balance, watched that little smile again. She screenshot it, probably for her Instagram story. #blessed, #inheritance, #gratitude. I stood there holding the folder Henderson had given me. Manila, thin. Inside was a single document. Articles of incorporation for Apex Innovations, LLC. Registered agent, Thomas R. Mitchell. That's me. Congratulations. You're now the proud owner of nothing. Chloe turned back to me. The sympathy was gone. In its place was something I'd seen my whole life, but never had a name for until that moment. Contempt. Oh, by the way, she said, good luck with the tax debt on Apex. Dad hadn't paid the IRS in years. Might want to check your mail. You'll probably need to sell that boring Toyota of yours to cover the inheritance liability on that worthless piece of junk. She said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather, like she was letting me know my shoe was untied. Then she turned and walked her car. A leased BMW. White. Spotless. She clicked her key fob, and it beeped twice. Mom followed without saying anything to me, climbed into the passenger seat of Chloe's car. They drove away together. I stood there in the parking lot for I don't know how long. Cars came and went. People walked past. Somewhere a dog barked. Life continued around me like nothing had happened. But something had happened. The pieces were clicking together in my head. The way Mom had avoided my eyes. The way Chloe hadn't seemed surprised. That little satisfied smile. The casual cruelty about the tax debt. They knew. This wasn't some quirky decision my dying father had made in a morphine haze. This wasn't him being sentimental about his company or wanting me to have something meaningful. This was a plan. My sister and my mother had known about the debt, had known Apex was worthless, had known it was actually worse than worthless. It was a liability, and they convinced my sick father to leave it to me while they took the clean money. I wasn't looking at an inheritance. I was looking at a setup, a trap. They'd handed me a live grenade disguised as a gift and walked away laughing. The folder felt heavier in my hands. I looked down at it. Apex Innovations, LLC. My father's legacy. My sister's joke. My mother's silent approval of that joke. I thought about all the times I'd been the reliable one. The one who helped Chloe with her taxes every year. The one who set up Mom's retirement account. The one who flew home every Christmas, even though Chloe was always too busy. The one who sat with Dad during chemo while my sister posted selfies from Cabo. I'd been the dependable son, the responsible brother, the numbers guy who fixed things. And this was what dependable got you. $1 million middle finger. I got in my car, started the engine, sat there with my hands on the wheel. I'm not an angry person. I've never been an angry person. I solve problems. I find solutions. I make spreadsheets in color code categories and create systems at work. But sitting there in that parking lot, holding that folder, I felt something new. Not rage, not even hurt. Cold clarity. The numbers had finally told me a truth I'd been too stupid to see my whole life. To my family, I wasn't a son or a brother. I was a line item on a balance sheet, an expense, a problem to be managed and minimized. The desert heat shimmered off the asphalt. Inside my car, the AC struggled to keep up. I opened the folder again. Read the incorporation documents. The registered address was some storage facility in Tempe, not even a real office. A unit, number 237. That's what my father had left me. A storage locker full of failed dreams and unpaid bills. That's what 40 years of being the good son had earned me. I thought about Chloe checking her bank balance. I thought about Mom staring at that carpet. I thought about Henderson's uncomfortable throat clearing, and that phrase that kept echoing in my head. Don't make this difficult. I put the car in drive, started to pull out of the parking lot, then stopped, looked at the folder again. Because here's the thing about being a CPA. You learn to read between the lines. You learn that sometimes the most important number isn't the one on the page. It's the one that's missing. And there was something missing from this equation. My father wasn't stupid. He'd been an engineer, an inventor, a guy who understood systems and patents and intellectual property. Sure, his company never made money. Sure, Apex was a failure by conventional metrics. But why leave it to me at all? Why not just dissolve it? Why specifically put in the will? The sun beat down through my windshield. Sweat dripped down my back. My phone buzzed. Probably my wife texting to ask how it went. I'd have to tell her. Have to explain that we just inherited negative money. That we might need to declare bankruptcy because of a company I never asked for. I looked at the address on the incorporation papers. Storage Unit 237, Tempe, 20 minutes from here. I should have gone home. Should have called a bankruptcy attorney. Should have started the process of protecting my personal assets from whatever disaster was waiting for me in that storage unit. But I didn't, because despite everything, despite the betrayal and the setup and the casual cruelty, there was a tiny voice in the back of my head, my father's voice, from when I was 8 years old and he was teaching me chess. Always look at what your opponent isn't saying. Tommy. The important moves are the quiet ones. I pulled out of the parking lot and drove toward Tempe, toward storage unit 237, toward whatever toxic inheritance waited for me there. The folder sat on my passenger seat. Apex Innovations, LLC. My father's failure. My sister's victory. My trap. $1 million in cash. And whatever the hell was in that storage unit. The math didn't add up. But I'm a CPA. And I'm very, very good at math. Storage unit 237 smelled like defeat and cardboard. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was standing in what used to be my father's office. Calling it an office is generous. It was a 10 by 15 concrete box with fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry wasps and walls the color of depression. Beige. Everything was beige. The walls, the metal shelves, even the dust seemed beige. This was Apex Innovations. My inheritance. My future. I'd spent those 2 weeks doing what I do best. Running numbers. Making spreadsheets. Trying to find a way out of the hole I'd been pushed into. The numbers were bad. No, bad is when you overdraft your checking account. Bad is when you finance a car at 15% interest. This wasn't bad. This was catastrophic. The IRS letters were waiting for me, just like Chloe said they would be. 3 years of unpaid business taxes, penalties, interest, compounding interest on the interest, because the government is really good at math when it comes to people owing them money. Total, $50,000. But wait, there's more. Unpaid legal bills from some patent attorney my dad had hired back in 2007. The firm had been sending invoices for years. Dad had apparently been playing the ignore it and maybe it goes away game. It didn't go away. It grew. With interest. With late fees. With we're about to see you fees. Another $30,000. $80,000 in debt. For a company that had exactly $0 in assets. Zero revenue. Zero prospects. Just a P.O. box. A storage unit. And apparently a really good lawyer who knew how to track down estate assets. I sat on an old folding chair that squeaked every time I breathed, pulled out my phone, opened my personal banking app. I had about $42,000 in savings. My wife and I had been saving for a down payment on a house, something with a yard, maybe space for kids someday. I watched that number in my head shrink. 42,000 minus 80,000 equals bankruptcy. We were going to lose everything because my sister wanted a Tesla and my mom wanted to avoid uncomfortable conversations. The math was simple and brutal. I was drowning, and the people who pushed me in were posting vacation photos. I opened Instagram. I don't know why. Maybe I'm a masochist. Maybe I needed to confirm that, yes, the universe really was this unfair. Chloe's feed was a highlight reel of everything I'd never have. There she was in a business class seat, champagne in hand. Caption, treating myself. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag inheritance. Hashtag living my best life. There she was at a Tesla dealership, keys in hand, that same satisfied smile. Caption, new ride, new energy. Hashtag manifestation. Hashtag abundance. There she was at some rooftop bar in Scottsdale, cocktail glowing blue in the sunset. Caption, life is what you make it. Hashtag grateful. She wasn't just spending the money. She was performing her victory. She knew I could see it. She knew I was watching her burn through Dad's savings while I sat in a storage unit, calculating how long until the IRS seized my car. My wife called. I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't tell her yet. Couldn't explain that the responsible brother, the numbers guy, the one who always had a plan, had just lost our entire future because he was too stupid to see a setup coming. The fluorescent lights buzzed. A truck drove by outside, rattling the metal door. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I looked around the unit. Metal shelves lined the walls. Cardboard boxes stacked 4 high. File cabinets. An old desk with a broken drawer. This was what 15 years of my father's work looked like when you stripped away the hope and the optimism. A storage unit full of failure. I should have left. Should have gone home, opened a bottle of something strong, and started calling bankruptcy attorneys in the morning. But I'm a CPA. And CPAs have this disease where we can't leave until we've reviewed everything. Every receipt, every document, every piece of paper. We're thorough. It's a blessing and a curse. So I started going through the boxes. The first one was old tax returns. 2015 through 2019. All showing losses. Apex Innovations had never made a profit. Not once. Every year was just red ink and hope. Second box. Business plans. Investor pitch decks. Letters to venture capital firms. All rejected. All marked with polite variations of thanks, but no thanks. Third box. Prototypes. Tech stuff I didn't understand. Circuit boards. USB drives labeled things like beta test version 4. All worthless now. Technology moves fast. Whatever Dad had been working on was ancient history. I was on box number 7 when I found it. A folder. Thick. Professional. Not cardboard like the others. This was the kind of folder you buy at Staples when you want to look serious. Black. With a label on the spine in my father's handwriting. His penmanship had always been better than mine. Engineers and their drafting classes. The label said, asset, do not discard. Asset, that word. In a storage unit full of liabilities and failures and broken dreams, that word stood out like a lighthouse in fog. I pulled it off the shelf. It was heavier than I expected. I sat back down on the squeaky chair and opened it. Inside was a single document, not a thick contract, not a business plan, just one piece of paper in a plastic sleeve, official looking, government seal at the top, United States Patent and Trademark Office, patent number 7,445,891, titled, Adaptive Streaming Compression Algorithm for Mobile Network Video Transmission, inventor, Robert Mitchell, my dad. I stared at it. This was what he'd been working on. This was his big idea. The thing he'd poured years and money into. The thing that had kept him in the storage unit instead of on the golf course like normal retired dads. A patent for video compression. I pulled out my phone, Googled the patent number. The USPTO website loaded slow because the storage unit's Wi-Fi was about as reliable as my family. The patent came up. I read through the abstract. Technical jargon. Algorithm, data compression, mobile networks, adaptive bitrate streaming. I didn't understand half of it. I'm good with numbers, not engineering. But I understood dates. Filing date, 1999. And this is where it got interesting, because there are two types of patent applications. A provisional application, which is basically saying, hey, I'm working on this thing, hold my place in line. And a utility patent, which is the real deal, the one that actually protects your invention. Dad had filed a provisional in 1999, but the utility patent, the one that actually mattered, wasn't granted until 2008. 2008. Why did that matter? Because patents last 20 years from the filing date of a utility patent, not the provisional. The utility, which meant this patent was valid until 2028. I did the math in my head. Current year, 2028, that was still years away. This patent was still active, still enforceable. I kept reading. The patent described a method for compressing video data for streaming over limited bandwidth networks, specifically designed for mobile devices. It was a fundamental algorithm, the kind of thing that doesn't describe one specific product, but rather a basic process that lots of products might use. And then it hit me. 1999. That's when Dad filed provisional. The internet was still doing that dial-up screech. Cell phones were bricks that could barely text. Netflix was still mailing DVDs. The idea of streaming video to your phone was science fiction. In 1999, this patent was worthless. It was a solution to a problem that didn't exist yet. But then the world changed. 2007, the iPhone. 2008, the App Store. 4G networks. YouTube on mobile. Netflix streaming. Suddenly, everyone wanted to watch video on their phones. But networks weren't fast enough. Data was expensive. You needed compression. Smart compression. Adaptive compression. You needed exactly what my father had patented. I sat there staring at my phone screen. My hands started shaking. Not from fear. From something else. Dad wasn't a failed businessman. He was early. 20 years early. He'd invented the solution before anyone knew there was a problem. He'd shown up to a party in 2028 when it was still 1999, and everyone thought he was crazy. But he wasn't crazy. He was right. And now every single streaming service, every video platform, every app that sent video over mobile networks, they were all using some variation of this technology. They had to be. It was fundamental. It was how the entire system worked. I opened a new browser tab, started searching, not for the patent itself, but for who was using technology like this. YouTube, Netflix, Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, Hulu, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, every platform that streamed video to mobile devices. They all needed video compression. They all needed adaptive bitrate streaming. They all needed exactly what my father had patented. And they'd been using it for years without paying him because he was just some guy in a storage unit. And they were billion-dollar companies, and nobody even knew this patent existed. My phone buzzed. A text from my wife. You okay? Call me when you can. I wasn't okay. I was the opposite of okay. I was sitting on a folding chair in a storage unit, looking at an $80,000 debt, holding a piece of paper that might be worth nothing or might be worth everything. I opened Google again, searched for patent infringement settlements, started reading cases. Microsoft got sued for violating patents, paid hundreds of millions. Apple got sued, paid billions. Samsung, Google, every tech company had paid out massive settlements for patent violations because patents are serious. They're property, intellectual property. And if you use someone's intellectual property without permission, you owe them. Big time. I read about something called a patent troll. At first, I thought it was a negative term. Turns out it kind of is. Patent trolls are companies that don't make anything. They just own patents and sue people for infringement. Everyone hates them. They're called trolls because they hide under bridges and demand payment. But here's the thing. They win. A lot. Because patents are legal property. And if you violate them, the law doesn't care if you're a troll or an inventor or whoever. You pay. And Apex Innovations, my worthless, debt-ridden storage unit company, was a failed tech startup. It was a patent troll. A sleeping giant. A bear trap that had been sitting in the forest for 20 years, waiting for the entire tech industry to step in it. I stood up. The chair squeaked one last time. I looked around the storage unit. All those boxes of failure suddenly looked different. They weren't evidence of Dad's bad business sense. They were camouflage. They were the wrapping paper around a bomb. My father had left Chloe cash. Safe. Boring. $1 million that would be gone in 5 years, knowing her spending habits. But he'd left me this. He'd left me ownership of a company that held a patent that every tech giant in the world had been violating for over a decade. He hadn't given me a participation trophy. He'd given me a nuclear weapon. I thought about Chloe's Instagram, her Tesla, her business class seat, her hashtag blessed life. I thought about my mom staring at that carpet, avoiding my eyes. I thought about Henderson's office and that phrase, "Don't make this difficult." I looked at the patent in my hands. At the date, 2028, still years of protection left. At the description, fundamental algorithm, impossible to work around. At the list of potential infringers, every company with a market cap over $1 billion. The math was starting to make sense again. I took a photo of the patent, sent it to myself, backed it up to 3 different cloud services because I'm not an idiot. Then I carefully put the original back in its protective sleeve, back in the folder, back on the shelf. I sat back down, opened my laptop, created a new spreadsheet, started making a list. Companies that stream video. Companies that use adaptive compression. Companies with deep pockets and legal departments that would rather settle than fight. The list got long fast. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My breathing was steady. For the first time in 2 weeks, the math was working in my favor. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. Didn't know how patent litigation worked. Didn't know if I could actually pull this off. Didn't know if the patent would hold up in court, or if there were loopholes, or if Dad had missed something critical. But I knew one thing. I'm a CPA. I'm good with numbers. And I just found a number so big it didn't fit on a normal calculator. Chloe had gotten $1 million. Cash. Liquid. Easy. I'd gotten a loaded gun pointed at the entire streaming industry. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The storage unit was still beige. Still depressing. Still smelled like old cardboard and broken dreams. But it didn't feel like defeat anymore. It felt like a war room. I looked at my phone, at the photo of the patent, at the number. Patent 7,445,891. 7 digits that might change everything. I thought about Chloe's Instagram, her Tesla, her business class champagne, her hashtag blessed life. I thought about my mom staring at that carpet, avoiding my eyes. I thought about Henderson's office and that phrase, "Don't make this difficult." My father had left Chloe $1 million that would be gone in 5 years. He'd left me a company with $80,000 in debt and a patent that every tech giant in the world had been violating for over a decade. He hadn't given me a participation trophy. He'd given me a nuclear weapon, and I was sitting in a beige storage unit, drowning in debt, holding the detonator. I'm not stupid. I know what capital gains tax is. I also know you don't go to war with a letter opener. The morning after my revelation in the storage unit, I did what any reasonable person drowning in $80,000 of debt would do. I maxed out every credit card I had left, took a cash advance, borrowed against my 401k. My wife thought I'd lost my mind. Maybe I had, but I'd also found something worth losing your mind over. I wasn't hiring just any lawyers. I was hiring sharks. Rutherford and Thorne. If you've never heard of them, good. That means you've never been sued by someone with unlimited money. They're the kind of firm that has a waiting room with actual art, not prints. The kind where the receptionist's outfit costs more than my car payment. The kind that doesn't charge hourly rates because hourly rates are for people who think small. They work on contingency, but only for cases they know they'll win. Their cut? 30%. 30% of whatever number comes after the dollar sign. And when a number might have 8 or 9 zeros, 30% is still obscene. The senior partner's name was Richard Thorne. Everyone called him Rick. He looked exactly like you'd expect a lawyer named Rick to look. Silver hair, $15,000 suit. Handshake like a vice grip. Smile like a predator who just spotted something bleeding. I sat in his office. Glass walls overlooking downtown Phoenix. You could see the whole city from up there. All those buildings. All those people. All those companies that had no idea what was about to hit them. I put the patent on his desk. Didn't say anything. Just slid it across the polished mahogany. Rick picked it up. Started reading. His expression didn't change. Lawyers are good at that. Poker faces. But I watched his eyes. Watched them move across the page. Watched them stop. Go back. Read again. He took off his reading glasses. Looked at me like I was a dinosaur that had just walked into his office and asked for coffee. Mr. Mitchell, he said slowly, do you understand what this is? I'm a CPA, I told him. I understand that this is an asset with zero depreciated value and potentially infinite ROI. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile. Something colder. More calculating. He leaned back in his chair. Pressed his fingertips together like he was praying to the god of billable hours. Do you know how many companies are currently using adaptive streaming compression? He asked. I shook my head. All of them. Every single platform that streams video to mobile devices. YouTube, Netflix, Disney+, Amazon, Hulu, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitch. All of them. And they've been using technology that infringes on this patent for over a decade. He paused. Let that sink in. The damages would be astronomical. But these companies won't want to go to court. They'll want to settle. And if we're smart, which we are, we won't let them settle. We'll make them compete. We spent 3 hours in that office. Rick brought in 2 other partners, patent specialists. They examined every word of my father's filing, looked for weaknesses, loopholes. Way some of might challenge it. They found nothing. The patent was airtight, broad enough to cover the fundamental process, but specific enough to be defensible. My father had done it right, had probably spent years making sure every comma was in the right place. One of the partners, a woman named Sarah, looked up from her laptop. This is valid until 2028, she said. That's still years of protection. And the infringement timeline goes back to at least 2010. We're looking at potential damages in the billions with AB. Rick smiled. Actually smiled this time. I like this guy, he said, pointing at me. We didn't file small claims. We didn't start with warnings. My lawyers drafted 4 letters. Not lawsuits. Not yet. Just letters. The kind that get delivered by courier. The kind that land on the desk of the general counsel and make them cancel their afternoon. Google, Apple, Amazon, Netflix. The letters were polite, professional, absolutely terrifying. They explained that Apex Innovations LLC held patent 7,445,891. They outlined how the patent covered fundamental adaptive streaming compression technology. They provided a detailed analysis of how each company's streaming infrastructure infringed on this patent. They calculated damages based on 10 years of unauthorized use. The numbers were astronomical. We're talking billions, with AB per company. And then, at the bottom, in language that only lawyers can make sound reasonable, they offered an alternative. Instead of lengthy litigation, these companies could enter into negotiations to purchase the patent outright. Full ownership, clean exit, no more liability. The letters went out on a Monday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, all 4 companies had responded. Here's what I learned about billion-dollar corporations. They don't panic. They calculate. They run the numbers. They compare the cost of fighting versus the cost of settling. They look at patent law and precedent and risk assessment. And sometimes the math says, just buy the problem and make it go away. But here's the beautiful part. Once one company knows that 3 other companies also want to buy your patent, it stops being a negotiation. It becomes an auction, a bidding war, a race to see who blinks first. Rick called me 3 days after we sent the letters. They all want it, he said, every single one. And they know the others want it too. We're going to run a sealed bid process. They each get 1 shot. Highest offer wins. No second chances. How long? I asked. 2 weeks. We need to give them time to get their ducks in a row. These are big companies. Moving slow is in their DNA, but not too much time. We want them anxious. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I went to work, processed payroll for my regular clients, reconciled accounts, did quarterly tax estimates, normal CPA stuff. But the whole time, I was thinking about that auction, about those 4 companies, about the number they might put on paper. My wife asked me what was going on, why I was so distracted, why I'd taken out all those loans to pay lawyers. I told her I couldn't explain yet, that she needed to trust me, that either we were about to be bankrupt or we were about to be something else entirely. She's a teacher, 3rd grade. She's used to dealing with people who don't make sense. She just nodded and said okay. Meanwhile, Chloe's Instagram was still a highlight reel. New designer purse. Hashtag treat yourself. Lunch at some restaurant that charged $40 for a salad. Hashtag living my truth. She'd already burned through probably $100,000 in 6 weeks. At this rate, her million would be gone in 2 years. Maybe less. I didn't hate her. That would require caring. I just watched with the detached interest of an accountant reviewing a bad investment portfolio. The day of the auction, Rick invited me to his office. I didn't have to be there. The whole thing was happening via encrypted email, but he thought I'd want to witness it. I sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than my first car, drank water from a glass bottle, watched Rick's assistant forward in the bids as they came in. First bid, Apple. The email loaded. Rick opened the attachment. PDF, professional letterhead, pages of legal language. And then, at the bottom, a number. $42 million. My hand started shaking. I put the water bottle down. Before I dropped it, Rick barely reacted, just nodded, made a note on his legal pad. Second bid, Amazon. Same format, same professional language, different number. $55 million. I stopped breathing. I literally forgot how to breathe for a second. My brain couldn't process numbers that big attached to my name. Third bid, Netflix. Rick opened it. Read through the letter. His expression didn't change, but I saw his jaw tighten. Just a little. Just enough. $60 million. The room felt smaller. Hotter. I loosened my tie. I never loosen my tie. I'm a CPA. We keep our ties tight and our columns balanced. But right now, I felt like I was going to pass out. One bid left. Google. Rick's assistant forwarded the email. Rick clicked it open. The office was completely silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the sound of my heart trying to escape my chest. He read the letter. All 3 pages. Didn't skip to the number. Lawyers never skip to the number. They read every word because words matter. Finally, he scrolled to the last page, to the signature, to the number above the signature. He looked up at me. $75 million, he said. Cash. Full acquisition of Apex Innovations, LLC. All assets, all liabilities, all intellectual property. 30-day close. The room tilted. Or maybe I tilted. I honestly couldn't tell. Rick was still talking. Something about tax implications and capital gains and structured payouts. But I wasn't listening. I was doing math in my head. The kind of math that doesn't feel real. $75 million. Minus Rick's 30%. Minus the $80,000 in debt. Minus taxes. Even after all that, even after everyone took their cut, I was looking at somewhere north of $35 million. Clean. Legal. Mine. 6 weeks ago, I was a CPA making $70,000 a year, trying to save for a down payment on a house with a yard. Now I was sitting in a lawyer's office, listening to him explain how Google wanted to give me enough money to never work again. Rick looked at me, actually looked at me, not the way Henderson had looked at me in his depressing office, not the way Chloe had looked at me when she told me about the tax debt. This was different. This was respect, recognition. The look you give someone when they've just executed a perfect play. Mr. Mitchell, he said, do we accept? I thought about my father, about him sitting in that storage unit, year after year, working on something nobody understood, something nobody valued, being 20 years too early and never living to see himself proven right. I thought about Chloe, about her hashtag blessed life, her Tesla, her champagne, her effortless cruelty. I thought about my mother, staring at that carpet, avoiding my eyes. I thought about that phrase, "Don't make this difficult." I nodded. Rick smiled that predator smile again, picked up his phone, made the call. 3 sentences. Professional, curt, final. We accept your offer. Full terms as outlined. Closing in 30 days. He hung up, looked at me, extended his hand. "Congratulations," he said. "You just became a very wealthy man." 6 months later. My new office doesn't smell like old cardboard. It smells like success. Or maybe that's just the leather chairs. Hard to tell. The view helps. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Not Phoenix anymore. I'd moved. San Francisco. Closer to the tech world. Closer to the money. I wasn't retired. Turns out, when you suddenly have $35 million, people want you to invest in their ideas, their startups, their boring technologies that nobody understands yet. I'd started a small fund, Mitchell Ventures. We invested in patents, in overlooked intellectual property, in the weird stuff that might be worthless today, but priceless tomorrow. I was good at it. Turns out being early isn't a curse if you're patient enough. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello?" Heavy breathing. Then crying. Not fake crying. Real crying. The kind that comes from your chest and hurts. "Tommy?" Only one person called me Tommy. Chloe talked for 20 minutes straight, barely coherent. The Tesla had been repossessed. Her influencer career had imploded because authenticity is hard when you're faking everything. The $1 million was gone. Not just gone. She'd gone past zero, into negative territory. Credit card debt, personal loans. She'd been living like she had unlimited money, because for a brief moment, she did. But unlimited money runs out faster when you act like it's infinite. She was being evicted from her apartment. The designer clothes were on consignment sites. She'd burned every bridge in her life because successful people don't need bridges until they're falling. I listened, didn't interrupt, didn't offer sympathy. Just listened to my sister realize that money without wisdom is just a timer counting down to zero. Finally, she got to the point. The ask, the reason for the call. "I need help," she said. "Just a little. To get back on my feet. You're smart, Tommy. You know about investing and stuff. I just need someone to believe in me. To give me a chance to rebuild my brand." Rebuild her brand. That's what she called it. I told her to come to my office. Gave her the address. Told her Tuesday at 2. She said thank you probably 15 times. I hung up without saying you're welcome. Tuesday at 2, my assistant showed her in. I barely recognized her. The designer clothes were gone. She was wearing jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. Her hair wasn't perfect. Her makeup was wrong. She looked tired. Small. Human. She sat down across from my desk. That desk cost more than her repossessed Tesla. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Tommy," she started, "I really appreciate you seeing me. I know things have been weird with the family, but I'm trying to turn things around. I have this idea for a lifestyle brand focused on authentic living, and I just need a little seed money to—" I held up my hand. She stopped talking. I opened my desk drawer, pulled out a manila folder. The same kind Henderson had given me 6 months ago. Funny how life rhymes like that. I slid it across the desk. Chloe opened it, started reading. Her face went through several stages. Confusion, recognition, fear, that pale, bloodless fear when you realize you've been caught. "These are text messages," I said, "from Dad's phone. You and Mom probably forgot that his iCloud synced to his laptop, and his laptop was technically an asset of Apex Innovations, which meant my lawyers had full legal access during the acquisition process." I pointed to a specific page, the one I'd highlighted. "That's you. 3 weeks before Dad died. Texting Mom. Let me read it for you. Mom, Look, the IRS is demanding $50,000. We have to make sure that trash company Apex goes to Tom. I'm not paying for this. I flipped to the next page. And here's Mom's response. I'll talk to him. I'll tell him you deserve the cash. Let Tom deal with the paperwork. Chloe's hands were shaking. The papers rattled. You didn't just know about the debt. I said, you conspired. You manipulated a dying man to protect your inheritance and dumped the liability on me. In legal terms, that's called undue influence. It's also fraud. My lawyers could contest the will, could probably get it overturned, could definitely make your life very difficult. I leaned back in my chair, the expensive chair, the one that cost more than her monthly rent used to be. But I'm not going to do that, because unlike some people, I value family. I slid another document across the desk. A contract. This is a job offer, I said. Position. Entry-level administrative assistant. Responsibilities. Filing, data entry, correspondence. Salary. Minimum wage. No benefits for the first 6 months. After that, we'll see. Chloe stared at the contract like it was written in a foreign language. You said I should deal with boring paperwork. I continued. Congratulations. Now that's your job. You wanted me to handle the numbers? Now you'll help me handle them. 8 hours a day. 40 hours a week. You'll answer phones. You'll organize files. You'll do all the tasks you thought were beneath you. She looked up at me. And for the first time since we were kids, since before Instagram and influencer culture and #blessed, I saw something real in her eyes. Hatred. Pure, undiluted hatred. You're just like Dad, she said. Her voice was shaking. Cool. Cold. You're punishing me because you can. She stood up, grabbed the contract, grabbed the text messages, threw them both on the floor. Papers scattered everywhere. I don't need your charity, she spat. I'll figure out myself. I always do. She turned and walked out, slammed the door hard enough to rattle the glass. My assistant poked her head in 30 seconds later. Everything okay? Fine, I said. Just family. I got up from my desk, walked over to where the papers had fallen, picked up the text messages, the evidence of conspiracy, the proof of betrayal, the smoking gun that could destroy what was left of my family. My lawyer had told me to keep these, to lock them in a safe, to never destroy evidence. Evidence is power. Evidence is leverage. Evidence is how you win. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm a CPA. And for CPAs, there's only one thing that matters. The balance sheet has to balance. I walked to my paper shredder, fed the pages and one by one, watched them turn into confetti, watched the evidence disappear into strips of meaningless data. My lawyer would have had a heart attack, but he wasn't here. This wasn't about the law. This was about something else. Something that didn't fit in a spreadsheet or a court filing. Chloe would figure it out, or she wouldn't. That was her journey now, her numbers to balance, her math to solve. I'd offered her a ladder out of the hole. She'd chosen to stay in it. That was on her. My phone buzzed. A notification. An email from my investment team. Another potential patent acquisition. Some biotech thing nobody understood yet. Probably worthless. Possibly priceless. Exactly the kind of thing I look for now. I sat back down at my desk, opened my laptop, reviewed the details, ran the numbers, did what I do best. Outside my window, the sun was setting over the bay. The water turned orange and gold. Beautiful. California has killer sunsets. Different from Arizona, but just as good. I thought about my father one last time, about what he'd tried to teach me with that storage unit and that patent and that impossible inheritance, about being early, about being patient, about seeing value where others see failure, about how sometimes the worst gift you receive turns out to be the best one, about how the math always works out if you're willing to wait for it. I closed my laptop, looked at the shredder, at the confetti that used to be evidence, at the proof of conspiracy, now just recycled paper. My lawyer would say I was stupid for destroying it, that I gave up leverage, that I let them win, but he didn't understand. This wasn't about winning or losing. This wasn't about revenge or justice or getting even. This was about something simpler, something more fundamental, something every CPA understands in their bones. The books had to balance, and now they did. Assets, liabilities, debits, credits, income, expenses, everything in its proper column, everything adding up correctly. The math was finally right. The balance sheet was clean. The audit was complete. I stood up, turned off my office lights, locked the door behind me. Tomorrow I'd review that biotech patent. Tomorrow I'd make more decisions about more money. Tomorrow I'd continue building whatever this new life was supposed to be. But tonight I was just Tom, not Tommy, not the boring brother, not the numbers guy, not the CPA who struck gold. Just Tom, walking to my car, going home to my wife, living my life. The elevator dinged. I stepped inside, watched the floors count down, watched the numbers decrease until I reached ground level. 0, the place where everything balances, where assets equal liabilities plus equity, where the math makes sense, where it all adds up. I walked out into the San Francisco evening. The air was cool. The city was alive with lights and movement and possibility. Somewhere, Chloe was figuring out how to survive on empty. Somewhere, my mother was probably still avoiding uncomfortable truths. Somewhere, my father's old storage unit in Phoenix was being rented to someone else with big dreams and bigger debts. But none of that was my problem anymore. My balance sheet was clean. My accounts were settled. My audit was complete. I got in my car, started the engine, pulled out into traffic. The numbers were finally right. And in the end, that's all that ever mattered.